This week's lesson is a little bit complicated, so bear with me. Maybe take notes as we go to help you to be able to work through it. It is reflected in our work when we talk about everything's a mirror, or everything outside of you is reflecting something within you. So if you judge yourself, you will judge others. But this is we're going to go a little bit more specific, and this is a dynamic that happens in relationships where we project our mind outwards. So the actual lesson is, I think, you think, how I think. So again, I'll say that again because if you haven't had that concept before, it's going to sound like a lot of mumble jumble. I think, you think, how I think. So this means that we will make the assumption that other people are behaving, feeling, and thinking the way that we would think, feel, and behave in order to have certain actions, for example. So let's go into this again a little bit deeper. So the first thing is, I think, you think, how I think. Therefore, your action is an action I would do if I felt unloving or hurt. So that's the unhealed perception. So that's the negative assumption. So let's be more specific. If you're at the grocery store, okay, we'll say Anna and Bill are at the grocery store. They're husband and wife, and she says, um, I need to find the craft dinner." So she's looking for the craft dinner, and Bill stands there and goes on his phone. And then she has this perception that if I didn't help my husband look for the craft dinner, then that would mean that I didn't care about him. I would only do that if I was upset with him and I was feeling unloving towards him. So she'll project that onto him. And then so him not actively looking for the craft dinner, even though she didn't ask, in her mind is evidence that he doesn't love her. Because if she was to behave that way, it would be because she was not feeling loving and she was hurting. And we know that she would be hurting in that situation. However, she'll project her psychology onto him. So if he's not doing that, he must feel the way I would feel if I was to not be helpful in this way. However, Bill is having the perspective of, I wouldn't want somebody to help me unless I asked them. So he might hold that lens. So he's doing what he feels is most loving for Anna at that moment because he's treating her how he would want to be treated. So if he was to, what it indicates is that if someone was to help him, even though he didn't ask for help, he might feel offended. He might get triggered. So then for him, it's an act of love for him to wait until she asks for help. And in that situation, if she did ask for help, he would have happily helped her. But he projected his psychology onto her that if she wanted help, she'd ask. And she projected his psychology onto him that if he loved me, then he would do what I would do, which I wouldn't need him to ask me for me to offer the help. So that's an example of how this plays out. So yeah, I think so. Then we can also say about other people. So then Anna would be saying that Bill, they think, you think, how they think. So Anna thinks that Bill thinks the way Anna thinks, and Anna and Bill thinks that Anna thinks the way that Bill thinks. So again, it's a little bit of a complicated word tongue scrambler, but the foundation of this here is that we project our mind onto other people. So we think that other people perceive, feel, and their actions are reflective of the way that we would behave if we were to have that action. So their action is an action I would do if I felt unloving or hurt. That's going to trigger you. Example of this is if you have a relationship and you are, okay, let's say that you're in an intimate relationship and your love language is touch and the other person's love language is service. So one of the things that can come up is we'll project our psychology on each other. So one partner might feel okay with saying no to sex or to be touched because they just don't want to, and they don't even consider that it would be something that would trigger their partner because it wouldn't trigger them if their partner said no to them. But someone who has a love language for love, they might not say no unless they were feeling shut down and unloving to the other person. And then they would project that out. Maybe it's helpful if I use names. So we'll say Anna and Bill. Again, Anna is really loves acts of service, and Bill really likes physical touch. So for Bill to say no to affection, that would mean he's shutting down and he's not feeling loving. Whereas when Anna says no to physical affection, it's not personal, it's neutral to her. It's just, oh, I just have a headache, or this is just what feels loving to me. However, if Bill feels like he can't say no to Anna, and if he did, that would be an indicator that he's not feeling loving towards her. When Anna says no to Bill, Bill will feel unloved if he hasn't healed this assumption. So the assumption is that people think like us. Same thing with Anna. Anna feels like an act of service, like, fixing things around the house is what makes her feel loved, or doing things that aren't asked of her. So she will make food, she will do things to serve and to take care of Bill. And if Bill doesn't reciprocate, she's going to feel unloved. And he might actually not register in his mind that he's loved by her acts of service, because if his dominant love language would be touch, if he's not being touched, he might not feel loved, even though she's doing all these things to express her love the way that she would receive it. And this is one of the reasons why, if we have different love languages so again, the love languages are physical touch, words of affirmation, acts of service, quality time, and gifts. You can go online and do a free quiz on the 5 love languages, but that's just one of the labels that we can use for how we express things differently. Now, when you heal this part of you, you won't make up the assumption. Instead, we'll start having healthy communicating and dialogue. But until that point, just for right now, let's start working on seeing this example in our lives. Okay. Also, feelings. I would feel this, so you must feel this. So I would feel loved if you gave me a hug. So therefore, you should feel loved if I give you a hug. Again, if I don't think it's necessary to send you a written thank you card for a gift, and I said thank you at the time, and I think that that's appropriate, if you have the perception that only a written thank you card is appropriate to make me, that if I respect you and cared about you, and whenever you have respected something and was grateful, and you've always written a thank you card, you would be triggered if I didn't send you a thank you card, because you had this perception, I'm not enough if I don't send a thank you card, so then I'll project that out. You're not enough if you don't send a thank you card. So this also causes what anger is. Anger is self-attack turned outwards. It's just a deeper lens. It's not just that we project out our own self-attack, but we make the assumption that other people think like us. And that's the core of this lesson, is we think that people think like us. We think people will feel like we would feel in certain situations. So for example, you get a text from somebody, you might have the thought, oh, I need to respond right away, or else they're going to be triggered and they're going to be upset. Okay, that's the same person that if you received a text, you receive the text, you feel like you need to respond right away. That's the same person that if you send a text to somebody else and they tell themselves, it feels most loving for me to do X, Y, and Z and get to this when I can, you will be triggered by them having boundaries. You will be triggered by them not responding right away, because you will feel like, well, if I was to behave that way and I was to take that long, it would be an evidence that I don't care about that person, even though the person who's sending you the message, not responding to you, isn't doing it because they don't care. It's just neutral. It's just their personality, is how they see things. This also happens that as we start to develop boundaries, you might find that people will project onto you that you shouldn't have boundaries. And it's because they don't have boundaries. So they'll get triggered by your boundaries, not because there's anything wrong with you having boundaries, but because they've told themselves they can't have boundaries. So it'll be quite triggering when you have boundaries. So being able to see not only how you project your mind onto others, also seeing when others project their mind onto you. And then the solution for this is love, compassion, gentle correction. So gently correcting yourself if you start getting triggered. Remind yourself negative assumptions are always false. If I'm getting triggered, there's something for me to heal. What negative assumption am I making right now? How am I projecting my mind onto them and telling myself that they think the way that I think? So if they're behaving this way, if I was to behave this way, it would mean this. So then this must mean this. And applying meaning to their behavior that very well might have nothing to do with the way that they're thinking. So being able to see that, and then also offer correction. So openly dialogue and saying, hey, Bill, when I asked for the craft dinner, I had an assumption that you would come and help me. And I'm realizing that I made that assumption. I was feeling kind of triggered. Can you help me understand why, if I make a comment like that, you don't come and help me right away? Because I feel like if you had done that, I would have come to help right away. And then Bill would say, you know, I'm so sorry. And I didn't realize that you had that perception. I have the perception that if you, unless somebody asks for your help, it's not loving for you to just jump in there and help them. Because when I was a kid, that was, I felt like that was an indicator that they didn't trust me or believe in me or didn't think I was capable. So that's where I learned that. So if we can help each other to understand our psychology, how we think, by giving that gentle correction and asking questions. Ask, can you help me under? So normally, so I have a feeling that if I was to say no, that would, be unloving to you. So when you say no, can you help me understand what your thoughts are? Because I don't want to make the assumption that you're thinking like I think. So again, this thought is the unhealed thought is I think how you think. And the correction is to realize that we're all innocent, we're all doing our best. Attack is never justified in any form. And in truth, nobody's really attacking you. They're just projecting their own stuff onto you. So they're either calling for love, they're expressing love. So, for example, in the conversation with Bill and Ann, Bill was actually expressing love the way he knew by not helping Ann. And I think I just called her Anna. We're not helping Anna. And then Anna projected onto Bill that didn't feel loving to her because that's not how she would behave. So be able to just clarify that with people in your life and being mindful that other people will project the way they think onto you and that you will project the way you think onto them. Now, a key communication technique that I really want to emphasize that hasn't really come up yet is that when you're communicating with others, especially with people that haven't done a lot of work on themselves, remembering that they struggle with their self-love and they'll project their way that they think is loving, the way they've been conditioned to think is loving onto you. So if you don't behave exactly the way that they think that you should behave for them to feel like they're emotionally safe because of their conditioning, they're going to get triggered. So we can give love and validation as a means to help to soothe that and make it less likely for them to get triggered. And then giving clarification when someone is triggered. Now, if you're getting triggered, be able to take a breath and say, okay, negative assumptions are always false. Somehow I'm projecting something or I'm adding meaning here that's not true for me to be having this experience, and I can choose again. So this is the core of that lesson. I feel like I got through all of it. We will talk about this, we can expand on this later on. But for tonight, good luck with that. I think you think as I think. And then that's the core of why we feel triggered and unloved. Okay. And why others might feel triggered and unloved.